Thanks so much for organizing this. I'm very glad to see that you folks are really propelling this idea to giving it flesh and bones and movement at a critical time. Thank you so much. Um, I do want to give, I have been at this, and I was, carried out and sustained a concussion that I'm still recovering from at Blinken's last news conference at the State Department. He wouldn't show his face for over a year at the State Department, and then finally did, and I was able to confront him. Um, so I do feel like we have to understand the insidiousness of the forces, and people understand the insidiousness of the Israeli military and so on, but just how sophisticated the forces are here. I'm old enough to remember the first Intifada in 1987 was seemingly a turn in U.S. public opinion regarding Israel, and then they were able to whittle away at that. So the progress that has been made in the face of this horrific evil is substantial, and it's due to activism and independent media and so on. But that they will employ all sorts of mechanisms to eat away at that, and we have to be prepared for that going forward. Um, the Several people have kind of asked why now with Uniting for Peace. Now isn't the you can get the dog in the picture too if you want. Now isn't the ideal time for it. The ideal time for it, and I've been writing about Uniting for Peace since 2014. Um, the ideal time for it would have been after the last ICJ order in May. The ICJ coming out of the Genocide Convention decisions from South Africa issued a series of orders, and the last one was the most clear. On May 24th, they said, "You, Israel, must stop your invasion of Rafah right now. You began your invasion on May 7th. You must stop." A properly functioning Security Council should have voted on a resolution to implement that ICJ order. The U.S. stalled for time, and then Biden comes out with his preposterous statement that Netanyahu has agreed to a ceasefire. And I'm sorry to say, most of the peace movement fell for it. And, got their hopes all riled up. Oh, there's going to be a ceasefire, hip, hip, hooray. So we have to be prepared for those kinds of maneuvers. And everybody forgot about the ICJ case, and then that allowed the U.S. in the Security Council to put forward its own resolution. Algeria had drafted a resolution to implement the ICJ order. The U.S. got Algeria to push aside their own resolution to do that and put forward this resolution blessing the U.S. phony negotiating process. So we have to be very careful about the maneuvers and the machinations that the U.S. and Israel and many of the Europeans are going to employ here. Craig has spoken to the Saudi-French proposal. I believe that there should be substantial protests around the UN in the coming days and weeks and months. I don't know if I know that there are some, but they need to be as robust as possible. I don't know if the groups involved here can be doing that. I know Medea's colleague at Code Pink, Rob Jarelski, has done great work in reaching out to UN missions. He's had countless meetings with UN missions trying to get them to do the right thing. The students at Columbia and NYU and CUNY and so on, they've taken a beating on campus and been repressed and so on, but they are rock stars on the global stage. Now, if they get down to the UN and strategically protest at different UN missions at critical times, that could be immensely valuable if that were to happen. Another thing that is another parallel to this. Many people here might be familiar with Martin Luther King's Beyond Vietnam speech at the Riverside Church, where he came out against the Vietnam War. Few people know that very soon after that, he held a rally at the United Nations protesting the U.S. Bombing of Vietnam. So they had a massive event at Riverside Church and then a massive protest at the UN. I imagine that it's probably too late to have a massive event at the UN, but maybe it's not. Maybe people can pull together something to galvanize activity in New York City in the coming days. You have the sort of General Assembly soft opening is this coming week, and then you have the grand, the leaders, so-called global leaders, Trump and company, on I believe the 20. It's a Wednesday, the 20 something. So if events can be done in New York to galvanize that, I think that would be of critical importance. I don't know, you, Jill, and others might have contacts and parliamentarians around the world, and they should be, making speeches in their various parliaments, pushing each of their governments to be doing this, posting them online, galvanizing, a snowball effect with this, so that each government feels the heat. If a government is willing to do thing X, we want them to do thing X, plus two. Everybody can be pushed, and we can all find somebody who we can push if we act, with the passion, the morality that the moment calls for, but also as strategically as possible.